you speak about taking forward the positives, acknowledging what went right, and also acknowledging what went wrong. So what was it according to you? What needs to be done?
Well, I don't know, frankly, in the sense that I'm not involved in day-to-day performance of athletes. I'm not there involved in day-to-day coordination. So for me to say something is as good as being an armchair critic. But I think I can only make some larger points here, which are I think I think there can be always better fine-tuning. I think Indian sport is also complicated in nature because there are so many stakeholders involved. There is the government, there is the Sports Authority of India, there is the National Olympic Committee, the IOA, there are your national federations, there are private enterprises, foundations working directly with athletes. So there are many touch points that an athlete has, which sometimes makes things complicated. And I think perhaps it's time to ensure even a higher degree of coordination.
Yeah.
Perhaps that already happened and we've improved on it even in Paris, but how can we even do that better? How do we set clear protocols in place in terms of who's going to be there with the athlete at an Olympic Games? Because we all know that when you go to a multi-sporting discipline event like the Olympics, the ratio of support staff, the ratio of coaches is always going to be limited. Yeah. But those are aspects which have a very direct influence on performance. But how do we set protocols? How do we set SOPs well in advance so that all stakeholders know what is in store? And that must be adhered to. So I think a little bit better coordination on those aspects. Again, I'm just only somebody from the outside and trying to make those points here.
But Abhinav, you are a stakeholder in this whole process of India when it comes to a global sporting competitor. How do you see the country, or how should the country move forward from here?
I think on the larger picture, I think if you were to ask me, and that's where really I can answer and maybe focus on, it would be, more appropriate if I make those points, because I think what is important is everybody says we're 1.4 billion in population, the world's largest population, but I think the most important question we all have to ask is what is the playing population of India? And my understanding or my assumption would be that it is substantially, it's a very low number. And I think that is something that we need to change, and we need to really focus on, and really focus on sports' larger role that it can play towards nation building. I think so far how we see sport is that, sport is great, our athletes should go out there and win medals, and that enhances the image of the country. Of course, it makes us all proud. It makes us all happier as citizens. It makes us all stand taller. No doubt about it. And that focus has to continue. However, I think we'll be missing a large point if we really don't see the larger role sport can play in nation building. I'll give you a few examples. We have to make sport more mainstream in policy across the board in India. How can sport play a more meaningful role in making India a healthier country, for example? We are a young population, but are we the healthiest population in the world? I don't know. I'm not an expert, but can sport play a more meaningful role there to make our citizens, the young citizens, more physically active, more physically literate, because that has a direct correlation on health. And so how do we ensure sport comes into to health policy? And that's important because that then also you start focusing on access to play. You start focusing on access to community sport and to community infrastructure, which allows people to enjoy sport for the sheer joy of playing sport. Then in education, I think that is another very, very critical aspect. How do we mainstream sport more in education? And again, I think so far we've only focused on how do we win medals. I think that's been but how can sport play a more meaningful role in shaping our young society? Probably a very young demographic. There is no better role that sport can play in terms of building character of young people. Sport teaches us so much. The learnings on the field of play is probably the greatest life lessons our young boys and girls can ever get, which will hold them in good stead in anything that they do in life. So from a values perspective, how can sports role really be to make sure that young India imbibes these wonderful values that sport has to offer. Then in terms of so many other aspects, gender equality, I think we have so many things that we do to empower women and girls, but sport can play a wonderful role there in terms of breaking glass ceilings. Whenever an athlete does well, she becomes role model in this country and inspires so many girls to dream, inspires so many girls to believe and break so many societal norms and glass ceilings to be the best that they can be and to dream big. So, aspects of that. There are so many aspects of infrastructure development in India now in terms of building smart cities. How do we ensure sport is mainstream there in terms of ensuring every smart city has an aspect of community sport, has an aspect of building certain infrastructure for general people in terms of community sport, because that is the foundation of sport anywhere in the world.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for our future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
On this today, the T20 World Cup bandwagon has moved across to the West Indies. What can we expect from this?
Hello, I'm Alison Green, coming to you from Durban, South Africa. Today we have a special show.
Start with a report on India's shifting nuclear posture. The first time since India officially became a nuclear power.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Aaron Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C.